Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I'm ready to do my first impressions on this little bad boy. This is the OZ Machine Company Roosevelt, and it was loaned to me for a review by my buddy Jason of the Millie PM2 Para 3 Club. So Jason will be linked down below, along with OZ Machine Company. I'll link all his stuff down below as well, because he deserves every bit of your attention based on my first impressions of this knife. The Roosevelt is his first offering. He just went full-time as a knife maker. He was working a day job and making knives on the side, and now he's only making knives. So we should encourage that because his knives are freaking phenomenal. This knife particularly is number 62. They're each numbered as he goes through production on these. I shouldn't even say production, as he makes these one by one. So this one, being number 62, is relatively new, although I was just looking at his Instagram last night. I think I saw the most recent one he's posted is completed is number 82. So now that he's full-time especially, he's kind of moving through these a little bit quicker, getting builds done, and yeah, these are freaking phenomenal. If I don't get a book spot in his upcoming opening of his books, I will probably cry myself to sleep, because my goodness, I have not been this in love with a knife since the Arius. The Koenig Arius changed knife collecting for me. It was a knife that I got, and then my expectations of all knives moving forward was different. It had raised the bar, and after getting the Arius, I let go of a lot of things in my collection that it's just kind of made look stupid. This knife is as exciting to me as the Arius was. Goodness, it is so good. So let's talk a little bit about the materials being used here, and then after we talk materials, I'll talk about what my experience so far has been with it. I imagine if there's ever a time when my first impressions is going to be very similar to my full review. I don't know yet. I still want to kind of honor the process, and if anything changes by full review time, I'll let you know. But with how infatuated I am with this knife already, I doubt that anything earth-shattering is going to happen over the next few days of carrying it. Anyway, materials-wise, we are working with a blade that is in Z-Finite. I think that's what's on this one. 80% certain? Almost positive. This is in Z-Finite. That's the steel that he works with a lot. Z-Finite is essentially LC200N, so really cool, very corrosion-resistant steel, and it is a nice stone-washed finish. And then we have titanium handle scales that have been, I believe Jason said they were Cerakoted. I specifically asked him, and I suck at listening when people answer my questions. So yeah, they're a nice black. I think it's Cerakote. And then we have gold anodized titanium hardware, including the clip and the backspacer. Internally, I don't think it's going to really work to show you, but come on. There is some pretty extensive internal milling, especially on the show side scale. The pockets that are milled out are really substantial, and then there's a big pocket milled out on the clip side as well, or the lock side. The spine of this blade is crowned in a really nice way. Even up to kind of where the jimping is, it's still kind of chamfered nicely. Yeah, so really, all we're working with here is titanium, 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 Z-Finite. And then there's bearings inside to make it all work nice and smooth. And that's what we've got. I guess there's also a stop pin. That's probably steel. Maybe it's titanium. I don't know. The interface for this lock is something definitely worth mentioning. So a lot of times, what's kind of the standard at this point in knife making is to use a hardened steel interface. So essentially what that means to the layman, assuming we don't all know everything about knives already, on a titanium frame lock like this, you've got the lock bar, which travels over and interfaces with the tang of the blade to lock it into the open position, right? And what they'll do is they'll mill out a little section of that, and they'll put a piece of hardened steel. They'll screw it onto the tang so that what's actually interfacing with the blade is hardened steel. Because hardened steel against titanium, the hardened steel is going to win over time. So if you make it hardened steel against hardened steel, you've got a more fair fight. To simplify it. That's probably not the most technical way, certainly, to describe that. But what some companies do, like Chris Reeve Knives, is they will take, instead of using a hardened interface, for a long time they just used titanium and they like carbonized the surface, I think is what it's called, which is an approach to doing it, and I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong either. But what they do now on the Sebenza 31, and I believe the Nkosi, and the Zan, I think on all of those what they're doing is they're putting a ceramic ball at the tip of the titanium so that what's actually interfacing with the steel is a ceramic ball. Ceramic ball is even harder than hardened steel. That works for me. Now, I've heard, I don't really mean to dump fuel on this fire as I'm prone to doing with Chris Reeve Knives a lot of the time. I've heard a couple of accounts of people saying that with that one ceramic ball as the interface, they have some lock rock or some play within the blade, whether it's side to side or front to back. I think it's front to back. So I've heard a couple of people say that on the new Sebenza 31 they have blade play, and without going any further into that, blade play is not a good thing. Now this is really good. So what he does at OZ Machine Company is he takes 2 ceramic balls, and those create both the detent, from what I can see and understand, and the lock interface. So they sit just proud of the titanium, right where the cutout is. I don't think it's going to be possible at all to show you. But there are 2 balls, 1, 2, both sitting right there. So now, instead of having one ball pressing against a flat surface to keep it steady, side to side and laterally, now you have 2, which creates a much more stable surface. And stable it is. This thing has 0 play in any direction, like really, really solid. And it feels kind of weirdly stable for how slim this knife is and how light it is. I almost feel like I should feel some blade play. And then you couple that with the action and how ridiculous the deployment is and how smooth the closing is. The fact that there's no play in this and that it's dialed this well feels so good. And I think a lot of what that has to do with is that there's the 2 ceramic balls creating that interface. Just a really, really cool design. I like that he's doing that, and it just tickles me. That's another little thing about this knife that's just fantastic. So yeah, I just glazed over action, but let's talk about the action for a second. Holes are greater than studs. If you disagree, then you've come to the wrong place. I like to Spidey flick knives open. That's my favorite way to deploy a knife. I like it more than flippers. I like it more than thumb flicking knives. I want to use my middle finger, and I want to flick the knife open that way. That's the way I like to open a knife. This is perfectly dialed for opening a knife that way. So if there's ever been a knife that seems like it was designed for me, it's another point for this one. I love the action. The crispness of the detent, it is obscene how snappy this thing flies open from a middle finger flick. If you're used to middle finger flicking like the Spyderco PM2, fun knife to middle finger flick. It's kind of the way that I always open it, and I enjoy it. But the way a detent is on a PM2, it's nothing like the detent on this. It is so satisfying to flick open. I have found that if I get it just right, I can... it's really difficult for me to thumb flick it, which is fine, because like I said, I prefer to Spidey flick it. Yeah, I've seen a bunch of people do it. I don't know if I'm just doing it wrong. I need to practice thumb flicking it open, apparently. But the Spidey flicking is just amazing. And then closing this knife, it's not like guillotine drop shutty, which part of that is probably how thin this blade stock is and how light it is. But you overcome the detent real quick, and then it's certainly smooth. It's not, again, not drop shutty, not a guillotine, but just the littlest bit of wrist, and there it goes. I adore this action. It's so much fun to play with. So yeah, let's talk now ergos. It's a good place to go from there. The ergos of this knife are some of the best that I've handled in a very long time. Somebody explained to me before I had this knife in hand, I forget who it was I was mentioning, or who I was talking to. It'll come to me probably after I'm done filming. Anyways, I was talking to one of the guys who owns one of these. I don't know what number he has, but he mentioned before I had this in hand, when I was waiting for it in the mail, that he feels like it's kind of like a really, really nice Spyderco Native 5 with a frame lock in titanium, and I can kind of see that. The way that this handle is shaped, this choil and this choil, and then kind of a almost flat. I guess it's got a little bit of curve to it, maybe. The way that these kind of choils or grooves interface with your hand, it does feel in some ways very similar to like my fluted carbon fiber Native 5, but it feels better. I really like the Native 5 ergos, especially choked up in the choil. This knife, I grab it up here in the forward choil every single time, and goodness, it feels locked in, it feels indexed, it feels comfortable. Nothing is poking or prodding me, nothing is upsetting in my hand. There's no hot spots. The spine being crowned, one of my favorite things. I love the feeling of the spine against my thumb. It feels locked in, doesn't feel like it's slipping anywhere, which is fantastic because nothing about this is overly textured. It's all very smooth, but it's just shaped appropriately for the hand, and I love it. I love the way it indexes the edge and where it puts the edge to work with. I like that we've got nice gradual belly all the way along. We've got a good tip. Everything about this is excellent for my hands. In reverse grip, still very, very good. I really quite like it in reverse grip. In a draw cut, I don't want to choke up in a draw cut because then I'm on this hump. Sorry, it's focusing like a madman. I like to grab it right here in a draw cut, but it works. Reverse grip draw cut, it's okay. If I had to make a cut like that, I could do it, but it wouldn't be the way I would hold this knife anyways. So yeah, in a hammer grip or a saber grip, kind of the primary grips that most people use, this knife is just, for my hands, absolutely phenomenal. I love the way this knife goes in hand. Let's talk about the blade for a second. So this blade, not only does it have the nice crown spine, but it is ground really well. And he starts with a nice thin blade stock. So this thing is one of the sliciest knives that I've had come through my hands in a long time. It feels behind the edge thickness about like my TRM Neutron, I think. I don't have the Neutron anymore. But it feels about that thin behind the edge. It's a nice tall flat grind that comes all the way up full flat, and because it starts thin and it's a nice tall full flat, it just gets real thin down here. You can see by the edge bevel that it is quite thin down there at the edge. The edge that came on this is stupid sharp, like just really, really sharp. Fantastic edge that's on it, all the way out to the tip. It's really good. What's crazy to me too is oftentimes when you have a full flat grind knife, it's going to end up with the tip way up here. It's going to be pretty thick at the tip, but the stock is actually thinned. It like tapers toward the tip, and it's a very precise tip. This is certainly not a knife that I would recommend prying with or doing like real hard use tip tasks with. This is kind of a scalpel. It's very sharp, very slicey. Light to medium duty EDC tasks, this will shine, absolutely. All that I've done with it so far has put it through a little bit of paper, and I've opened 2 boxes with it, like cut the tape, because this isn't my knife. This is Jason's knife. If I get one of these, make no mistake, I will be using and adoring this knife, but this one's not mine, so I'm being very gentle with it, but it cuts fantastically well. What have we not talked about? Carry. So I've had this knife in pocket as a primary. I've had it in back pocket as a secondary. Between the two, I've carried it for about a day and a half now. And in either position, it is phenomenal. This knife is big enough that it can make kind of a small primary for me. But what's fantastic about how slim this knife is and the overall profile of it in general is this makes a fantastic secondary knife for me. And the amount of like cutting performance and the amount of just fidgetability, the amount of coolness as secondary knives go, holy crap. This is just absolutely excellent. So yeah, I've really liked it, both front pocket or back pocket. And I love that it can fit both of those rolls because that gives it twice as much opportunity to get in my pocket if I ever do get one. And I'm pretty sure it'll be in pocket for a long, long time if I do. But yeah, it carries very well. The pocket clip doesn't have any sharp corners on it. Nothing about it is annoying or bothersome. I think it looks good. It's a milled titanium clip. As milled titanium clips go, this one is positioned very, very well. So it's not deep carry, but I have knives with deep carry clips on them. Like loop over deep carry style clips that are positioned so poorly that they ride less deep than this one does. So as titanium clips go, this one is positioned fantastic. It goes all the way to the end of the knife and it comes up to where, I don't know, there's that much. Come on, focus. That much sticking out of your pocket. Totally reasonable for me. So I'm Mr. I prefer deep carry clips. Would I think it would be cool to have a deep carry clip on here? Sure. Not opposed to that one bit. But this is one of my favorite, if not, I'll have to think about it. It might be my favorite milled titanium pocket clip that I've ever experienced. It functions very well, goes in and out of pocket perfectly. It's placed right. It positions the knife well in pocket. The retention is good. It's just everything about it is very, very, very good. Much like everything about this knife, period. The point of this whole thing, this first impressions, if you can't tell, is that this knife is obscenely good. It is just... If you want to like boil down my preferences in a knife and put them into a tangible thing, it's going to be really, really close to identical to this. I don't think I even could design a knife this good if I were to spend a week with pen to paper trying to think of a knife that would be perfect for what I want out of a knife. I think this would probably be better than I'd be able to accomplish without really working at it for a very long time to make a knife perfectly custom for me. It's just so, so good. So, I guess that's kind of my first impressions. Time will tell. This might be the first knife to come along since the Arius to dethrone the Arius as my favorite knife. I don't know yet. I need to spend some more time with it. But like if you ask me right now, gun to my head, would I trade my Arius for this knife? The answer would probably be yes. Part of that could be that I'm more confident I could get another Arius more easily than that I could get one of these. So that plays a role, sure. I really, really hope I'm able to get on his books because goodness, I just need one of these. If there's been a knife in my whole history of collecting knives that I felt like I've needed, it's this one. I really, really want one. So we will see what my full review brings. It'll probably be a lot of just confirming what I think now if I had to guess. Maybe I'll find something I don't like about this knife. Doubt it, but maybe. It could happen. Yeah. Maybe what I'll do when I do my full review is I'll verbalize what I think would be my perfect spec for the knife. Assuming I'm able to get a book spot, I'll be thinking of what I would do on my Roosevelt because the options are like pretty freaking unlimited in terms of what he'll do, materials he'll work with, finishes he'll do, all that kind of stuff. So maybe that'll be part of my full review to keep that spicy and interesting compared to this video. Anyway, thank you for checking it out. This is the OZ Machine Company Roosevelt, and my goodness, it is my favorite knife in a very, very long time. Maybe just my favorite knife. We'll see. Thanks, guys.